Hello friends, it's Laura here from The Change, and I just want to welcome you to our mini-series of mini-sodes. We're bringing you a selection of our interviews from across seasons 1 to 3. We've spoken to some amazing women, and we thought, well, why not take some of the bestest of the best bits and bring them to you in little sneaky snippets while we get busy preparing season 4 with a whole bunch of new interviews. So have a cup of tea, sit back and have a little listen to some of our highlights with some great banter and chats with some brilliant women. We'll catch you soon. Bye.
This week, we bring you our best bits from our episode with Sophie Scott. We interviewed Sophie, Season 3, Episode 2, and we talked about lots of things, including burnout, mental health, and change. We hope you enjoy.
There's a concept in psychology called the spotlight effect, and what that refers to is that most of the time people are just thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about you. They're not thinking about anyone else other than themselves and what they're going to have, what they might be going to have for lunch or for dinner. And they're very sort of self-focused. And I think that's something that is really important to bear in mind when you're thinking about how do you get people to change their behaviour. And one of the main ways to do it is to think what's in it for the individual. Because even though Australians are quite altruistic and probably, when I looked at the research in terms of why did Australians largely comply with a lot of the things that were brought in during COVID, and a lot of the researchers came up, believed it was because we are probably more likely to do things for the common good other than other countries. So that was a big tick in our favour. But ultimately, people do really think about what's in it for me in terms of if I'm going to make this change, how am I going to benefit? So being able to appeal to that is something that I think helps get those messages across. And it's also, I think, because I'm really interested in behaviour change and habits, and I love reading about the science of habits, and I've thought about how to change my own habits and what actually works and makes a difference. And it is true, you really need to think about what are the immediate benefits, because if it's too long off in the distance, our brains are so focused on the immediate, what's happening around us right now, that we can't really think, oh, I'm going to do this now and it'll benefit me in 6 months or 12 months, whatever. If you can just think about whatever you're doing today is going to just help you. And then, I talk about what we do today is a gift for your future self, but that future self can be just tomorrow. It doesn't have to be 6 months from now. It can actually just be how you're going to feel tomorrow. So if you go to bed at a reasonable time and have a good nighttime routine, it'll actually help you be able to get up in the morning and do the things that you might want to do. Whereas if you have that bedtime procrastination and stay up really late, then you probably won't want to get up in the morning. I am really fascinated with how we can motivate ourselves, or how we can embed those behaviour changes so that we don't have to rely on motivation, and we can just go, okay, these are my rules to live by, and this is what I do. The way our brains are wired, we're wired to sort of focus on the negative, because we're always looking out for, to try to see whether our environment is safe, and the way our nervous system works, we're always looking out for danger. So we have to actively work against that. We have to actively challenge that through your thoughts and through your habits. Otherwise, if you don't, then the brain will just naturally focus on what's going wrong. And so you have to actually actively work to switch that around. It's a bit like, if you read a review of something and it's all positive, and then there's one negative line, and the one negative line will stick with you rather than all the positive things that someone might have said. If they write one negative thing, the way the brain works, you'll just remember that one negative thing. And so it's just, I find it helpful to have those constant reminders of that, and that we need to be actively sort of focusing on, habits and activities that create those positive emotions so that you're counteracting the negativity that just comes with being a human being.
Yeah.
Sure.
And that's for me when I'm engaging with, and I typically look for your content most days because it's a good reminder for me every day, just to not get stuck in my negative self-talk, or whether it might be just reminding myself to stop and take a break, or that I don't have to be perfect today. Done is okay. And all of the just bite-sized reminders that you put out, they have been such a godsend to me on days, on so many days. So, yeah.
And I just think, we're all trying to do our best, and we're all, busy and have lots of responsibilities, as midlife women. And sometimes it can just be, particularly if you're on social media and you're looking at other people's lives thinking, oh, they've got it all together. But the reality is they're probably just feeling the same as you and me and all of us. So I think it's good to just have those reality checks and to think about, focusing on building in rituals in your day that are going to really serve you. And that's the thing that really helped me is actually thinking about building in habits that are so automatic that you don't actually need to rely on motivation, but you just think, okay, as soon as I wake up, for me, it's like make a cup of tea and do some quick meditation. 10 minutes, it's the first thing I do, first 10 minutes of the day. So it's just done and you don't have to think about it, rather than having big grand plans to do a whole lot. But the more you can sort of ritualize things and embed, because so much of our behavior is automatic. It's a bit like jumping in the car and driving somewhere that you know the way really well. You don't need to think about which way you need to turn, and you just do it. And so that's what we want to do with these habits that are going to help, nurture you and boost your mental health and well-being. You want them to be as automatic as possible. Absolutely. And so you don't have to rely on motivation.
Yeah, so true. Sophie, do you have any other sort of quick tips maybe especially for women in midlife around coping with, burnout, stress generally?
Yeah, so look, the biggest thing for me is, we've talked about daily actions, we've talked about habits, building in the breaks to your day. When I go into workplaces now and I talk to teams about how to perform at a high level without burning out, I show them the neuroscience about how your brain can only work for about 90 minutes at a time, and then you need to have a break. And if you don't take that break, what happens is your concentration goes down. You might be more likely to make more mistakes. And so building in just like a little reset after every 90 minutes, and people find that fascinating when they're like, oh, wow, it's why you can't just sit there and work for 3 hours at a time. It's not designed, the brain's not designed that way. So understanding that, building in those breaks for your cognition and your mental well-being, even if it's only 5 minutes, you just need to have that little reset. And then also the other thing that I think about too is, and this is something that, given we all sort of have worked and are working in the media, is that the urgency, what I call the urgency fallacy, where we think everything has to be done right now, straight away, at this minute. If someone sends you a text, you're like, oh, I've got to get back to them, or I've sent an email, they've got to respond straight away. And what I've realized outside the media environment is that's, most people are really surprised when I write back to them the same day. They're like, oh, thanks for responding so quickly. Whereas in the media, that would be like, if you don't respond within 30 seconds, people are like, what's wrong? Why didn't you email me back?
What happened? Is there a bigger emergency?
Exactly. And so that sense of urgency and that sense of you've got to respond to everything straight away, it just sets you up in that fight or flight, to be constantly looking out for danger. And so being able to just go, you know what, not everything has to be dealt with at the moment. And because if we feel like everything's urgent and everything's super important, then it really means that nothing's urgent and nothing's super important. So being able to actually categorize what are the things that actually really need to be dealt with urgently, and what can I put down my list. And there's a little phrase I call, you can think about your to-do list, and then whether there are things you can ditch. I think I've done a YouTube on it. It's ditch, delegate, and delay. So ditch is really like, what can I take off my agenda? What can I just go, you know what, I'm not going to do that right now.
Mhm.
Delegate is thinking about, is it something that you really need to do, or could somebody else do it? We don't have to do everything. And then delay is probably my favorite, which is like, it doesn't need to be done today. Ideally, I need to get it done by the end of the week or the end of the month, and then to sort of put it off until it actually has to be done. And that can reduce your sense of overwhelm when you realize not everything has to be done at this very moment, not everything's urgent. And just thinking about, if there was only one thing that you could get done today, what would that thing be? And just focus on there. Like pick that big thing first. And ideally, it's another theory. It's called the big rocks theory, where you think about what's the most important to either, move you forward on a project or move you forward in your, whatever it is in your health journey, what's going to make the biggest impact, and pick that thing first, and then start from there. So just start with one thing first, and then you'll find other things will follow after that.
Love that.
Building those habits, it's like building a muscle, and it's like the more you just do it, the more automatic it becomes. And I always sort of think to myself and say, what can you do on your worst day? Like on the day when you're feeling crappy, or you're feeling tired, or you're busy, whatever you can do on your worst day, start there. That's where you need to start. So if it's 5 minutes, then just start with 5 minutes. But that's having that consistency, and, thinking about what can you do, every single day, ideally, so that it becomes an automatic behavior, and you don't have to rely on motivation, and you don't have to rely on feeling good or feeling energetic, or, and that way you're just building those guardrails against stress and the guardrails against burnout. And those little things really make a difference. And that's what I had to remember when I was, covering the pandemic, just to maintain those little guardrails, so I didn't fall back into burnout again.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to The Change, a fully independent podcast. Whether you're seeking inspiration, curious about change, or just here for the great banter, we'd love you to make The Change your new go-to podcast.
And even better, send us your voice notes or questions about change. We'll use them on the show. Email us at changepod2023@gmail.com, or DM us on Instagram at _change_pod. Find us wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram for more on The Change.